Well, hey, I'm here. I think I've got another video open somewhere with the noise on. Don't know where though. Let me try and yeah. Um, this is hilarious. Let me mute myself for a second. Sorry about those technical bunglings. I'm not used to the high riding life of being a YouTube blogger yet, and I'm still working out a lot of those technical things. Now, I'm appearing on another stream a bit later on, discussing the last Mission Impossible film, not the one that's out at the moment, but the one with Henry Cavill as the bad guy. However, a good friend of mine highly recommended a movie to me, and it just so happened that I popped around another friend's house and they were about to watch it. So I was like, oh, I'd quite like to see this. So I sat down and watched it before I went to work. I've just got back from work and I had time to write a few things up about it. And that film is causing quite a stir in America at the moment, and it's called The Sound of Freedom. Now, as you know on my channel, I always like to have a co-host on if I can, just so that people don't have to stare at my face alone for too long. Fortunately, Rick Moranis lookalike, White Bear, has agreed to come on the channel and stun you all with his beauty. Here he is. Yeah,
Hola. Man. How you doing?
That's not bad. Dude, I'm not sure I've seen you in the flesh before. Were we on the stream together with Copa?
Yeah. When you were on Triple M. For True Lies, yeah.
True Lies, yeah, that's right. But you didn't have a revolving three-dimensional universe behind you on that occasion.
Yeah, I just opened it up. You got to clean. You got to clean, but it is what it is.
Fantastic. Well, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you haven't seen the film, or you have? Sorry, I was a little confused.
No. I haven't. I've seen interviews around it with with Jim and others, but I still haven't got to see it. So I really wanted to kind of get your take kind of in real time on it too.
Yeah. I mean, I literally watched it a few hours ago. I mean, so first of all, some people will be relatively new to my channel, and also your good self, sir, to me. Let me tell you sort of where I stand when it comes to review films. First and foremost, he's gone already. First and foremost, as a filmmaker, I just take films at face value. What is the story it's trying to tell? Is it any good? Is it well directed? Does it have a good script? Probably the most important thing. Are the performances in keeping with the tone of the script? Is the narrative cohesive? Does it flow? And then there's lots of other details like the score, how it's shot, all of those kinds of things. All of that stuff is important. But a gut reaction review is what are my immediate thoughts on a movie. However, on this stream, and Melvin is popping in. I'm not here, but hello anyway. Okay, good. You're not here. Very good. Irene Jobson popping in for a minute. How are you? Very well, thank you. Very well. I'm also not here mentally. Okay, very good. Yeah, I heard a little bit about the production, which made me want to dig a bit deeper. Now, as someone who's been on the sharp end of, shall we say, the mechanism that is the film industry, and I've tried to get funding for more projects, White Bear 3, than you've got different avatars for your name.
Right.
So that's at least 3, and seen them go tits up, sometimes days before filming. I was good friends with director Albert Poon. You might know that he directed films like Cyborg and The Sword and the Sorcerer, and a lot of the canon movies of the 80s, the B movies. A lot of them were directed by him. He was one of their in-house directors. He did quite a few indies on his own. He told me countless stories of production hell, distribution hell, that kind of thing. So I do have a little bit of a wider perspective on how all that stuff kind of works and how it functions or doesn't function, and sometimes how films get shelved and why they get shelved. But before we get into that, which I do want to get into, let me just tell you my gut reaction to the film. So on IMDb, I would probably give it I'd probably score it about an 8 out of 10. So I'd give it a strong score, even maybe 8.5. There's some things I would have liked to have seen a bit more of, but I suspect that they're more budget limitations. So for people who don't know what the film is about, it's a true story drama, which anyone who knows me and my writing is very much my bag. And I did a massive drama production about the trial that followed the shootings in Kent State University, which is a 5-part miniseries. I did the play about the Hillsborough football disaster. I've just done the play about the Horizon Post Office scandal, which is the biggest miscarriage of justice in British history. So The Sound of Freedom tells the story of a subject that I am a little bit up to speed on because of my ex-partner's education, I guess she gave me on the subject a little bit. We'll come back to that, which is human trafficking, in particular child trafficking, and in particular child sex trafficking. So it's the true story of Jim Ballard, I think is the name of the character that Caviezel plays. Is it Jim Ballard?
Yeah.
Who is initially part of, is he part of a subsection of Homeland Security? Yeah. Special Agent for Homeland Security Investigations, HSI as it is known. And he arrests people who possess and distribute child pornography in America, which the credits tell us at the end is one of the most rising areas of crime. And I'm sure that's true. I haven't checked to see if it is, but I'm sure it is true. And the film kind of opens, I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but the film kind of opens with that sort of thing going on and them conducting an arrest, and establishes Jim Ballard as our kind of main character. And then parallel to that, you have another story taking place in South America, in particular the country of Colombia for the most part, where you see a woman, a very attractive young woman, knocking on the door of a household where a very young girl lives. I believe it's established in the movie that the girl is 6 or 7 years of age. And the woman has seen her singing in the marketplace, and she is proposing to the father that the girl come and enter a beauty talent contest and get represented by her agency, which looks for child stars, and that she'll get to go on a singing contest on TV. I guess this is almost being sold as like a children's X Factor. The father agrees and not only takes her to the audition, but also his son, who happens to arrive home at the same time. And there's an office and everything set up. There's a photo studio and everything set up. But the father's told that he can't stay or hang around, and he should come back up and pick his kids up at 7 o'clock. He comes back, his kids are not there, the office has disappeared, and these kids have been trafficked. This is intercut with an opening title sequence, which is particularly disturbing, with real footage, real CCTV footage of various children in South America being kidnapped off the street. One of the pieces of footage is of a man kidnapping the baby of a homeless woman who is sleeping in a porch of a shop from out of her arms while she's asleep. I think I found that piece of footage the most disturbing. And of course, on the black market, with a lot of parents who can't have children, a young child is probably a valuable commodity as well, maybe to be sold, to be fostered, so the film doesn't pull any punches. It's not salacious in terms of showing more than it needs to, in terms of the fate in store for the children, the implications and the places that it cuts are disturbing enough. I found the film an extremely hard watch. It's not one that I'm going to be rushing to watch again. I will watch it again, but I need a bit of time to pass under me.
Right. Was it pretty graphic, or more just exactly what's going to happen or what's going on?
It's not graphic in any way.
Okay.
But there's a lot of long, slow shots of doors closing or curtains closing.
Right.
Kids looking terrified, with in the company of not particularly pleasant looking individuals. So you know what's coming. Now, going back to the main story, Jim Ballard didn't have power to go after people overseas. He met the father, who lost both children. He managed in an American operation to get the son back, as the son was being trafficked over the border. We're getting into spoilers a little bit here, but I won't give away everything. And as a result of that, he is determined to find the daughter and bring the whole family back together, which results in him resigning from his job, but conducting a rather elaborate sting operation to not only rescue a large number of children in one go, but capture a large number of paedophiles in one go. That sting operation is true. It actually happened. There's real footage of it at the end of the film. You can find real footage of it online.
I believe it said on that last one, that you're talking about, 123 people, 55 which were children, all from that one mission.
Yeah, I think they rescued either 53 or 55 kids, between the ages of I think sort of 8 to 16, something like that. 54 children, I think.
Right.
It was. Now, the woman who was largely responsible, not solely responsible, don't want to heap it all on her. I have done a bit of research on this, but because as soon as I watched, being a kind of drama documentary writer and filmmaker myself, I don't just take a film at face value. I like to then find out, okay, who's this character based on? What did they really do?
Right.
This is actually the woman who lured these children to photo shoots and promises of, beauty pageants and whatnot. She was an ex-runner-up of Miss Columbia, former beauty queen pageant herself. Her name, I think, is on here somewhere. She's now in prison, and she's awaiting sentencing. Kelly Joanna Suarez, and she was only 20, but she tried to come off with the defense of being a victim. But I mean, in the footage of the raid, you can see that she's sitting, around a table drinking cocktails with all the bad guys. She's not sitting with the kids, supervising the kids. So I strongly reject that defense, just based on my own research and what I've seen in the film. And many of the minors, when they were rescued, they were already found to be in a state of some of them had been drugged, either with ecstasy, MDMA, or similar things, presumably to make them more pliable to the horrors that awaited them. Horrendous stuff. So now I've become aware after watching the movie of some of the things that have brought criticism against it, but I don't want to get into those now. I would rather just talk about the movie and is it a good movie and should people go and see it, and then we'll get into some of the kind of the stuff behind it and so on. Yeah, Tim Ballard, sorry, not Jim Ballard. Thank you for the correction there, sir. So, Copa's asked, I think I know this guy, but I believe he's just had five children, I think. Someone said on another channel that The Sound of Freedom was bad filmmaking. What did you make of it? Well, okay, let's talk about that. So The Sound of Freedom, I think it's important to know the background to this film before we evaluate it. First of all, the budget, 14.5 million. I think that's something like half of Robert Downey Jr.'s fee on a normal movie. So it's already recuperated 40 million. But anyway, it's a 14 million pound budget. And that's not a big budget. I could make Pegasus Bridge for that if someone gave me that money, quite a good version of it as well. But 14 million back in the day, that's, I believe, when Raiders of the Lost Ark was first shot. I think it was around 14 to 18, something like that. So back in the day, this would be a reasonable budget for a movie. Aside from Jim Caviezel and Mira Sorvino, there are known actors in this, but there are not other big names. So it's not a project where everyone's come in to cream a bit off the top. So you're going to know that a big chunk of that 14 million is going to go on the screen, and you can see it on the screen with the multiple use of locations. The child actors are absolutely fantastic. I don't know where they got them from, but they're brilliant. I mean, they're really, really good. 14 million is a low budget. It is not for me, but it is a low budget. If I had that, that'd be massive. Bad filmmaking. Well, bad filmmaking would be poor script, weak acting, bad direction, confusing narrative. I don't think the film has any of those things. So no, I don't think it's a bad film. I think it's a solid film. I think it's hampered by the budget a bit. I think the scale of the story could have been bigger, and I think the film would have got more attention, even more attention, if it had maybe two more big names in it. But I don't think it suffers for any of those things. That's just purely sales talk. For what it is, it's a perfectly decent film. It's really two stories. It's really Tim Ballard's, wasn't it? Tim Ballard's story, and it's the story of the family that he's trying to help out, and then all the other characters around that, in terms of the content of the script, are kind of second place. I'm not suggesting that they're less important in the real context of the story. I mean, look, TNZ has raised a valuable point here. Honestly, even if it was complete fiction, child trafficking isn't. So it raises awareness and it did its job. Hypocritical Hollywood, fucking Argo won an Oscar and 99% of it is bullshit. I have to agree with that. So this brings me to my ex is from a third world country, which we visited many times. And one of the big problems in that country is that it's heavily industrialized by another major power. I'm not going to mention which, but it may be connected to the virus of an unspecified origin. And that major power is constantly recruiting young people to go for job opportunities. And a lot of them come from very poor backgrounds or are orphans. And many of them have never been seen again. And then there's also a big thing with people going to Dubai to do the same thing and disappearing. So you have to ask yourself, where are all these young kids going, or young girls? It is a massive problem. And it's where it's biggest is where people think the kids won't be missed, or where the parents don't have the resources to cry out and protest or have the right credibility or clout within their community to get the police or the authorities above the police to take action. And don't forget that the police in most third world countries are corrupt as so. Poor working class families, and the father, you really feel for the father in this film. We don't ever see the mother. We assume the mother has either passed away or is no longer with him, but certainly isn't involved in the kids. Outcast Alex Tabrizi is in the house, one of the original founders of the Outcasts. I'll just give him a shout out, seeing as he's here. Thank you, Alex, for popping in. I'm not surprised that this is a film that's suddenly taken an audience has got behind it, and I really don't think, for me, I don't think that's political. I think it's a human issue.
It shouldn't be political.
No. I mean, it probably has political capital, but have you seen the original movie Traffic that was also made into a TV series? Actually, I think the TV series came first and then they made a movie. The movie had Catherine Zeta-Jones and I believe Michael Douglas in it.
Yeah, I got to see part of the series.
But... So that was not a million miles away from this. It was multiple characters, and it was all about different people on different places within the trafficking chain, and that wasn't so much to do with sexual trafficking of children, that particular film, but it was more the trafficking issue in general, and also to do with drug trafficking and this kind of thing. But the film is very good. It's a very good movie. This is that kind of movie done with not as many big stars, with a smaller budget, and it's done very well. Yeah, I found it, you know, like within 10 minutes, my hairs were all like up and like on the back of my skin. I want to talk about a couple of the cast. See, I always like to talk about the lesser well-known cast in a movie.
We got Bill Camp.
Yeah, Bill Camp is one of my is definitely a standout character actor for me. You've also got the guy from Alive, haven't you? The guy who plays the dad is the he's the mechanic on the plane in Alive, the one who's crazy, the one who keeps saying, to get to the radio, you got to get the batteries and all that. And he's one of the people killed in the avalanche that comes later in the film. But let's talk about some of the cast. So Jim Caviezel, I've seen in a couple of things. Believe it or not, guys, I've not seen Passion of the Christ. Don't
really? How?
I've just not seen it.
Okay,
I'm not an atheist. I'm a spiritualist, but I'm just not a big organized religion guy. It just didn't appeal to me.
Right.
So I may watch it.
It's a movie that pushes anything on you and all that. It's just like, the storytelling. You know, if it's got Mel Gibson directing it, it's not going to be. But if you watch it, you'll appreciate the acting in it.
Sure. And I like Jim Caviezel and I like Mel Gibson. I did see the South Park version of it, and I thought the South Park version probably told me a lot. So the cast in this, you know, it's not just a film can't just stand on a couple of big names. The guts of your cast, to quote the film director John Sturges, who made The Magnificent Seven and of course The Great Escape. The guts of the cast are where it's at. So Bill Camp plays this character called, I think he's called the Vampire or Vampira or something like that. And there's my buddy Jace. And he's I guess you could call him an anti-hero. He's kind of somebody that used to run with the drug gangs in Cartagena and be part of the cartels. But now he's kind of, I think the thing I get from his character is he's trying to make amends for his past sins. And the way he's doing that is by rescuing children.
Right.
So Bill Camp is great in this. I think the producer of the movie is also in the film. He is. So Eduardo, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Verastegui, would that be? I'm not sure. Someone might have to phone in with us on that. He's really good in this. Now, he is the guy who got the film distributed. So he's the reason we're seeing this movie. It's not down to Jim Caviezel. Let's get into the history of this a little bit as well, but I'll finish I don't want to jump around too much. We'll finish cast. So he's really good, and he's not just a producer bagging an acting role. He can act. He's a good actor.
He's got a good face for it.
Yeah. Manny Perez plays, I believe, is one of the bad guys. He's pretty good. Jessica Barroto Perryman, I've seen in one other movie, and she plays the beauty pageant queen who lures the children. And as you can see, she's well cast. She even looks a bit like the real person in question. I don't know that there's any shots of her here in the film. I don't think so. And then I want to give a shout out to that guy who was in Alive. Where is he? That would be Yosei Zuniga. I think you pronounce that. He's a great actor. Every role I've seen him in, he's been great. He plays a lot of undercover cops and this kind of thing. His role as the father in this, he's got about four or five scenes. Every scene is just heartbreaking with him in. And lots of comments going back and forth in the chat. I'm going to come to some of them in a minute. But he's really good in this movie, and getting the character of the father correct and casting that role correct was really crucial, because if you're not on side with the dad, you're not really on side. So
Right.
that was very important. I want to mention the kids. So this is one of the kids who gets kidnapped. God, this kid is good. Lucas Avila. I mean, I don't know if he's going to do a Home Alone and his career might go to his head and it's all over by the time he's 12, or if he's going to pace himself.
But
Right
you thought that
there,
he actually
you wrote this. Frequency is very underrated. Frequency is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Good.
And I'll tell you a sad story. That's the last film that my father saw before he died.
Oh, really?
And I called him up and I said, I'm sending you a movie to watch on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to watch it. And as soon as you watched it, you've got to call me. And I said, this film says everything about mine and your relationship. And when he called me, he was in tears on the phone. And oh man, I don't.
Yeah, it's a very
choke me up if I go down that road.
I hear you, brother.
Yeah. So we get to see the seedy underbelly of Cartagena. A lot of the movie was actually shot there. I like some of the. I like the way the movie's shot. It's shot in a very intimate style. It's quite. The colors are quite interesting. It's an interesting color palette. Thanks
for trailers made the colors look like they were actually pretty popping. Yeah, did it just actually all look that good to you? Was there too much darkness or anything?
No. I found the look of it was quite authentic for me. Okay. I liked it. Just on the Leroy. By the way, my father passed away in 2010, so we're going back 12 years, mate. But I do appreciate the comment, though. Thank you so much. And from Cannoli Lasagna Sasquatch. It's my new name for you. So yeah, I mean it's not an action film. It's got some action, but it's not an action film. It's a true story drama. I mean, a good film to parallel this with, if you haven't seen it, people watching, go onto YouTube and search. I think the whole film is still on there, if you can find it. Hillsborough Drama, which is a 2-hour feature film about a terrible tragedy that occurred in the UK in 1989, where the police kind of screwed up there. They were looking after a football game. It all went wrong. 96 fans were crushed. It was a big thing to get justice. And this is not that far off. Totally different subjects, totally different narratives, of course. But they're in terms of their content and emotional punches, very similar kind of movies. Yeah. So I highly recommend, if this is your kind of thing, true story drama, that's my specialty. I've got like probably 300 of them on DVD. I could go through my collection at some point. That'd be a good stream to do, and talk about all the good true story films. So interestingly enough, and I was kind of keen to see, okay, so who directed this? Who are the people behind this? So we talked about the producer, and I'm going to come back to him when we talk about the struggle that the film had getting made. Now, the director, Alejandro Monteverde, I think that's how you say his name. He's done 3 feature films, one of which I've seen. I've seen Little Boy, which I loved it. I thought it was a great little movie about a boy that sort of wants to end World War II with his magical powers so he can bring his dad home. And it's a really sweet film with British actors Tom Wilkinson and Emily Watson playing the mother and I think grandfather respectively. Michael Rappaport, who's an actor we don't see enough of, playing the dad. Got a very similar, tonally completely different kind of movie. Very optimistic, very bright, very cheerful, very 1940 color palette. But it's a similar quality. So that's got 7.3 on IMDb. Sound of Freedom's currently got 8.7. So it's written by Alejandro and Rod Barr. Now Rod Barr has only done one other screenplay, and that's in post-production, called Cabrini, I don't know anything about that. He's been a producer of Cabrini Charts, The Rise of a Poor Audacious Woman Who Became One of the Great Entrepreneurs of the 19th Century. Okay, all right. Well, very interesting. That sounds like another true story drama. I won't go down that rabbit hole now.
His first movie was in 2006.
So I don't know whether a lot of people know this, but this film completed shooting in 2018. So this film is already 5 years old, and it's only just been released.
Now, what's the story behind that? Why take so long?
What indeed? Well,
the dramatic water chug.
I did quite a bit of digging on that today, because as a writer, director, producer, and someone who's had films delayed and someone who's had films not distributed in the way they should and all that kind of stuff, I was very interested to find out the story behind that. So let's get into it, shall we? The story behind it, according to Wikipedia, which I did also verify through some other articles and things, so I'm not just going to wax off Wikipedia and assume it's gospel. I do a little bit more research on that. The film was completed in 2018, and it was a distribution deal with 20th Century Fox. Now, you'll know around that time that 20th Century Fox was purchased by Disney, the big, gobbling Pac-Man of the film world. 20th Century Fox was a good studio back in the day. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, and then Disney shelved the film, and thus it stayed for a really long time. Now, the producer that I mentioned earlier, Verestagi, he approached Angel Studios with the release rights. I guess he got. I'm not sure what the difference is between, and I should know this being in this industry, but I've never heard of this before. I don't know what the difference is between distribution rights and release rights. So, but anyway, he got the release rights back to the film. So maybe that meant that he could approach other people to distribute it. So he approached Angel Studios. I'm guessing probably recommended them by Jim Caviezel, who predominantly make, religious dramas. They've done a film about Jesus and this kind of thing. And they've done some other stuff. They've done a sort of children's fantasy animation series and some other bits and pieces. But, their back catalogue is not stuff that I'd be jumping to track down. Right. But what they did was they used equity crowdfunding to raise the funds to distribute and market the film, which means basically each person's buying a share, and that share is worth a percentage of the profit. 7,000 people invested. They got 5 million. The reached the goal in 2 weeks. This was partly due to things like Mel Gibson endorsing the film in a video. So they had some big guns that came out. And Goya Foods got behind it as well. So, they had some big guns. And if you've got big guns on a crowdfunding campaign, that can make all the difference. So that's how it got distributed. That's how it got taken back off of Disney. And that's how we've ended up seeing the film now. Now, because it deals with a very, very difficult subject,
right?
Some people might argue, well, we didn't really know how to market it. We weren't sure what to do with it, so we shelved it. And that happens a lot more commonly in the industry than you would think. As Dr. Beast Hunter said, Disney shelved it. I have to say that I don't think that was the case here. Having seen the film, and you can see the trailer, and the trailer is actually a very well cut trailer. There's absolutely no reason why this film could not have been released earlier. It may have been held back because of the pandemic and that kind of thing, because people weren't going to the cinemas. So in some ways, you could argue that it's been released at the right time, because there's nothing else good on at the cinema at the moment.
It does seem like it's hitting a little bit more closer to the heart in the news and all that. So maybe it was for the best, but
Yeah, I mean, if it had come out during the pandemic and gone straight to Netflix, I don't think it would be making anywhere near as big a splash as it is now. Because I think the fact that it's come out in the cinema, and my understanding from the articles I've read is that cinema screens are having to book out more screens because they're selling it out. And I think that was also part of the crowdfunding marketing campaign, was to encourage people to buy tickets ahead. And that crowdfunding tactic, it worked because they had a very high amount of pre-sales on the film at movie theaters before the film even opened. So I think that's something like 4 million in ticket sales before it even opened. That's incredible advances for a $14 million movie about a subject that's very uncomfortable, that people aren't really jumping out of their cars to go and watch on a Friday night with some popcorn, you know.
Absolutely.
So you've then got to ask yourself why why is the movie hitting a nerve with people? Why is it being successful? I think this is a topic that hasn't been discussed for too long, so it's good that it's being discussed. It's a massive problem, much, much, much bigger. I was working with actor Craig Fairbrass on a police thriller, very dark. I don't know if you're familiar, White Bear, with the American TV drama show called The Shield with Michael Chiklis.
Right.
So we were writing a British version of that, and the bad guy cop in it, who was a very bad guy, he had killed innocent people and things like this. But most of his motivation, his moral compass for doing what he did, was he was trying to take down the biggest, not just sex trafficking, but organ trafficking organization in the world that he'd finally cracked into after many years. And there were a lot of very high up and well-established people in it. And we were kind of paralleling it to Jeffrey Epstein's world and all that kind of thing. And it went all the way to the top of Amazon. And everybody said that this TV show was going to get the green light. They hadn't seen anything like it before. It was really gritty. And me and Craig both loved The Shield. So we took very much the darkness of that world and those kind of characters with a lot of nuance, where you didn't know if you liked them or not from one episode to the next. Wrote the whole treatment out for the whole thing and everything. And on the week that we were going to get the green light, this plainclothes police officer picked up a woman in Clapham Common called Sarah Everhard and murdered her. And we still don't know exactly what the full story of that was, or why he did it. It hasn't all come out yet. But that happened in the week that we were waiting for the green light on our show. It caused a huge uproar in the press. Women were marching on the streets. Everyone distrusted the police, quite rightly. Amazon turned around and said, yeah, maybe this isn't the right time for us to make a TV show about a corrupt white aging police officer. So that was the end of our show. But the core story of it was tackling this exact same world in an even grittier fashion. My ex-partner, who told me a lot of stories about things that had gone on, including, kids waking up in hotel rooms in Dubai to find, they're missing one kidney and this kind of thing, in a bathtub full of ice. All of that stuff, all of those storylines, I'd incorporated into the material, so it had a real resonance. This guy, who, by the way, is another filmmaker, has just said this topic has been discussed for years, but no one listened. Conspiracy. Well, in order for this to happen, in order for these operations to occur, and for these kids to go missing and ending up God knows and wherever, absolutely, you've got to have high people up the chain being involved somewhere.
Oh, like you mentioned, many countries, their justice system isn't exactly all that fair, pretty corrupt.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So I don't think it's so much a conspiracy as it is just the truth of the situation.
And the fact of the matter is, a lot of officials in important positions will take bribes to look the other way. People want to make money, and we've created a world where we're always looking through our own telescope. We're not thinking about the bigger picture. It's a mentality in the UK known as "I'm all right, Jack." You know, I'm all right. I'll look after myself. Thank you very much. That's what "I'm all right, Jack" means. So it's really interesting for me to read that this film was made with a very low budget. It got shelved, and then crowdfunding was required, and the rights were required to get back to then distribute the film, which has now become a big success. It's now, I think, hit 40 million. So I'm sure those 7,000 investors who got those shares and those distribution rights, they're probably pretty happy right now.
Right.
And good for them for backing such a worthwhile project. Okay, so we've got quite a bit of chat going on here, so I'm just going to go back a little bit and pick up on some stuff here. Leroy said, I asked my cousin how realistic Taken was. Yeah, some people have compared this to Taken. I don't think it's remotely similar, other than there is a sex trafficking story in both movies. I would say that Sound of Freedom is your non-Rambo version of this world, and the Taken film is the Rambo version of this world. Tom Wilkinson, was he in The Man from Snowy River? I'm not sure. Was he? Do you know White Bear?
I'm not sure. I'll take a look.
Yeah, Foxhole and Disney sat on it. Top Gun Maverick didn't hold out that long. Yeah. Most important film for the world right now. Definitely one of the most important, I would agree. It's not politically good for them to release this movie. There's 85,000 missing children in the United States that they cannot account for, and worldwide, probably close to 1 million. I wouldn't, wonder.
Tom Burlinson.
Oh, so yeah, Tom Burlinson was in Man from Snowy River, not Tom Wilkinson. Keith said, I think people were starving for a movie they could sink their souls into. I mean, yeah,
I agree.
On the big screen, there's not been a lot. I think so. I went to see Indiana Jones on the opening Friday, okay, in London, and oh, hang on, I've sent this to. Hold on, I've got to send the link to somebody to join the stream. I've only just seen the messages on my phone. Hold on, here we go.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie that people kind of have been waiting for. I mean, like I said somewhere here in the chat, there's a lot of people. A lot of these movie makers are trying to make some easy money off of redoing movies or continuing on franchises and ruining them.
Yeah.
But really, this is a new new ideas, new types of movies. That's what I want to see. That's what a lot of us want to see. And this is a true story.
I mean, I think the overall budget of Indy was about 400 mil in the end, with distribution and marketing and all of that. And you could make $20 million films for that amount of money, or even more at 14 million. People, studios should be making movies for around. They should commit to making, 6 or 7, 10 to 20 million pound movies per year, and you don't need big names to sell a film. Certainly, you don't need them alone anymore. I don't think the big name actor thing is as important as it used to be. Back in the day, star power was all about seeing your favorite face on a Friday night. But you know what? The days of cinemas being packed out on Friday and Saturday nights it's not there anymore, and certainly not in the UK. And the other thing is that kids under 30, they've got so much choice in terms of what they can see, what they can digest, the actors that they follow. It's much more microcosm than you would think. And I think that the problem, one of the things that the studios are really failing to grasp, is they're not making the most of wringing the dollars out of the wallets of the older audience, like myself. You look a bit young, White Bear, so I'm not going to necessarily include you in that. But playing age of 29 to 33. But for us, if people had given us an Indy 5 that was the same quality as The Last Crusade, we would have all gone to see it 2 or 3 times. I saw Last Crusade 3 times at the cinema. And even with pockets being tight, you know, if it was good and word had got round, everybody would have been in on that.
Mhm. Things are also a little bit different, you know, after pandemic wrap, and with there's just so much opportunity for people to watch. You know, when people figured out that they didn't have to go to the theater anymore like we did back in the 90s and all that, like, you know, that was the thing to do. And then when they figured out that they didn't have to go, and that they can stream, and then they can binge watch whatever, it kind of took away from that. And you grew up in a time where if you want to see a movie again, you either have to, you know, buy the VHS, or you're going to have to wait until a theater decides to re-show it again. And it was a group effort. It was a group thing where, you know, people could enjoy and have a good time doing that. But people are so reclusive in a way.
Well, before I go through the rest of the comments in the chat, I'm bringing in my other guest, from Positive Fandom. I like the way I said that. That's how I'm going to introduce you from now. I'm going to record that. That's going to be a sound effect on my channel.
There we go.
Hello, gentlemen.
And I just love this whole blowing locks thing. It's so very gone with the wind.
I know, very dramatic there.
Yeah. I feel quite left out. I mean, White Bear looks like the universe is literally exploding from his head.
Here we go.
You've got flowing locks. All I've got is lots of Jerry Anderson toys. I'm not sure that compares adequately. So sorry. I thought that I put the link in that email, and I think I clearly had forgot.
Well, no worries. It's okay.
thought I put it in, and I hadn't. But so sorry to bring you on late. We've kind of done, you know, the stuff about the cast and all of that, and we're talking really now about why people are going to see this movie, and the impact that it's having on them, and that of itself is generating sales. I believe. I think word of mouth has been really important with this film, beginning with the crowdfunding campaign, where people were encouraged to encourage their friends to book early. That was part of the crowdfunding campaign, which is why the film had such massive pre-sales. So, Aram, you went to see the movie. What did you think of it, and what would you give it on IMDb out of 10?
I would probably give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Ooh,
I thought
the film, there.
Yeah, I thought the film was fantastic, and for many reasons, I do love films like this. And I think initially when I first had heard about this film and started to actually watch the film, it felt like a documentary almost to me, as if we were watching a real story play out on, you know, in the movie theater. So it didn't necessarily feel, you know, obviously I know it's a dramatization, but it didn't feel that way. And then I suddenly realized that one of the reasons why it didn't feel like a dramatization and it felt like it was unfolding in front of my eyes is because the main character doesn't seem to be infallible. He doesn't have, you know, we saw Extraction and Extraction 2 come out, and, you know, we see movies where the main character has to go and save someone. And in this particular case, I didn't get the impression that the main character was infallible, that he was, there were points where I even wondered whether he was going to make it out. And I think that element in it added to the realism of it, the danger that is actually surrounding this entire organization, because it's a group effort to get this whole trafficking thing done. It's a group effort. So all of us already, it's not about awareness with this film because we all know it exists. I think that realizing the danger and that element of danger, whether, you know, it was when he was hiding, or, you know, there were some points where he had his hands in, I guess, handcuffs. And I almost wondered, I said, oh my gosh, are they going to turn on him? I actually had these feelings in the film that I wasn't expecting to have. I didn't know. I almost, at some points where it looked like things were going to be going his way, I wondered, well, will things fall apart? You know, it felt like the world was against him, and it really did come out as a miracle at the end. And it had a happy ending, or as happy of an ending as you could with a story like this.
As you were you're gonna get. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier the way the film is shot is a very intimate style, and it really puts you on the spot, and you're like that voyeur peeking around the corner in every scene. And there's a lot of those kind of shots where the camera does that, and a lot of the slow zooming in, and it I think it's shot in a way as a voyeur to this story to make you feel uncomfortable, because it is uncomfortable to go down this narrative. But at the same time, when you've digested the story of the film, I think the mission is, we have to get this out there. This has to be exposed. This is a big problem, and it is a big problem. It's right up there with narcotics and slavery now. I think that they say at the end of the movie is it something like 20 times more than when slavery was actually legal. There's more slaves now than when slavery was actually legal. Now, granted, when slavery was legal in some countries, the population of the world was a lot smaller then. So that's a little bit, you got to keep that in perspective a little bit. Mm-hmm. But there's a big problem with there's an excellent drama made. I forget the name of it, but I think my friend Nonzo and Nonzi was in it. And it's about it's a one-off movie made for TV, and it's about a woman who was sold to. She came over to a family. I think she came from Africa. Her passport was taken off her as soon as she arrived, and she was basically kept as a domestic household slave. And she was, when the family went out, they would lock her in a kind of basement area under the stairs. She was never allowed to leave the house. Except to get the mail in the mornings, and that was eventually how she escaped. She made eye contact with a neighbor, and eventually managed to pass him a note. And this was how this woman got away. Completely true story. It's not particularly overly dramatized in the movie. It's quite a simple story, but just that level of slavery, of people being imprisoned as some kind of domestic thing. And I think she was being raped by the father of the household as well. He would come back and, if the wife wasn't there, he'd assume he could have sex with her. So pretty horrible circumstances for any person to find themselves in. And that level of slavery is massive as well. So people coming over, assuming they're coming for a job through these agencies, bogus employment agencies, is a big thing as well, really big thing.
Now, earlier you had mentioned that did they represent person, I think you called her Kelly. Was it Kelly or Catherine, the one who pretended like she had nothing to do with?
Yeah, the real lady in question. Aram wasn't here then, so I'll put it up for your benefit, Aram. This is the beauty pageant queen, the real person who was responsible for recruiting the kids. You remember, she pretends to have the album at the beginning and so on. This is the real person. So, she's currently in prison awaiting sentencing. She was 20. Kelly Joanna Suarez was a contestant for Miss Cartagena, and she's accused of recruiting youth in the slums of Cartagena to go to parties with foreigners. Authorities suspect that Suarez used a modeling agency as a front to recruit youth for sex tourism.
Now, I think one of the first episodes of that show, that James Spader show, Blacklist, was actually something akin to this, and we've seen it before in real life, that these people who help attract other people and into being sold, and who are running some of these things end up actually being used, or I don't know how mentally they get into it, how they get pressured into it, the Stockholm syndrome of it all and all that, but
sure,
they eventually become those people who help run this, and it's terrible.
I mean, there was one of the things I always kind of thought wasn't really answered in the all the Jeffrey Epstein documentaries I've seen, and the Ghislaine Maxwell documentaries, is that if you listen to all the evidence of the girls, all of the girls mentioned the two women that found and recruited them. It wasn't usually Jeffrey or Ghislaine. It was these two PAs that worked under them. and that they were in their early 20s, and I'm sure that they were paid very well. I have a big problem with someone in a highly paid position like that having no moral compass because they're in a highly paid position. But I do agree that the process to get into that position, and then the process of going down that road and then being given that job to do those things, is probably a very nuanced and gradual one. It probably isn't day 2 of your job as a
Right.
PA, to go and find girls for sex parties. But does that make them innocent of wrongdoing? I don't think it does. But
Well, the opportunities, from different countries sometimes, makes that more enticing. Like, look, you could live this horrible, filthy life, but you're gonna be gilded. It's gonna be a gilded life for you. But and or you can go work at the textile mill. If you're lucky. So that's probably how a lot of that kind of crap happens. But
yeah, indeed. Somebody's asked, where can you watch this in the UK? It's not on at my cinema. It's not out at the cinema in the UK. I saw it at someone's house, so not my house. So it was on. I had to go around there to collect something, and it happened to be on. And I was like, I think I need to see this film. So yeah. So I mean, we commented on the quality of the acting, the script and stuff. I thought was very good. I will say there was one area of the film that I thought was missing for me. It'd be interesting to see, Aram, if you agree. White Bear hasn't actually seen the film yet, and that was the relationship that Ballard had with his wife, and also, all their kids and stuff like that. We didn't really see a typical family scene before Dad went off and did the important job. So that the stakes there for him weren't really established, and I did feel they were missing in the film. I wanted to see him with his own children. I wanted to see him and his wife with their children, and then the scenes with Mia Sorvino felt very shoehorned in, and a lot of the times they were scenes on the phone, or they weren't even in the same room, and I suspect that was probably a scheduling and budget thing. So they were cleverly done if that was the case. But it did feel to me like that stuff was kind of missing from the film. Aram, you got a view on that?
Yes, I think they didn't want to focus on his family. I think they wanted him to be a family man, but it wasn't an integral part of this story. They wanted to separate his family life from the story itself. And in order to do that, that's why there really were very little verbal communication between he and his family. And there were a lot of scenes of her kind of in the living room, and them having eye contact, and they slowed those scenes down, I think, even in some point, to make it seem as if it was almost like a dream. We were not going to see his real life with his family. We got a few phone conversations or where he talks about how he's going to retire, and then she pretty much flat out supports him and says, you have to do this, then go and do this. And the individual, like, minutia of day-to-day life with your family was something they wanted to erase from this film. They didn't want you to focus on that or be distracted by it. And I think it was very clever to do that, because it could be distracting, and you start to make comparisons. There's even a scene where the father, who's missing his children, looks at a picture on the man's desk and talks about family, but they're very careful not to create sort of this show his family structure in normal day-to-day life, because they don't want you looking at that. They want you focusing on this the main family, which is the father and his two kids. And I think it's okay. I think it seems like they have a loving family, and he's very happy. But I think if they went too deep into his personal life, then people would start to talk about his personal life, and then about the main story.
I accept that it's not the story of his family. I think I just would have liked one scene with him and his family at the beginning of the movie, just to kind of give us the whole picture as to who he was. Maybe that wasn't needed, but I think it's more important to have screen time of the father who lost his kids. 200%, absolutely. And I was saying
He was an incredible actor, Lance, in White Bear 3. He was an incredible actor. The feeling that he had in this, he's extraordinary.
Yeah, we talked about him before you arrived, and that's Jose Zuniga, who is a Honduran American actor, and you would know him. The first thing he appeared on was Alive, the Ethan Hawke true story of the crash in the Andes. He's the mechanic who survives the accident, and he's kind of crazy, and then he gets killed in the avalanche. But he's played a lot of. If you look at his CV, I mean, of course, he's been, things like DEA agent in Con Air, so you might remember him from Con Air. He was in Money Train, the film, not the.
Oh, that was him in Con Air. Okay,
that was him in Con Air. Yeah, that was him in Con Air. Yeah, and I mean, he plays a lot of. He was an IMF agent in Mission Impossible 3. I mean, he plays a lot of agents or undercover cops, many of whom get killed. If I remember some of the films of his that I've seen. I mentioned earlier that it was so crucial to get the casting of the father right, because if you weren't on board with that dad and fighting for that dad in your head, you're not. The film has lost you already, and I don't think that would have been very likely, but they certainly nailed the casting with him, and you really felt for him, and all those scenes with the empty bed, and and when he turns around to Jim Caviezel and says, if there was an empty bed back in your house, in one of your children's rooms, would you be able to speak? And yeah, I mean, it's of course you wouldn't, of course you wouldn't. Was the cinema busy when you went to see it? When did you go? What time of day was it? How many people were in the theater?
It was not busy, and I went in the morning. And I think that part of what his performance really is his face. I mean, I know he, just because there isn't as many voice parts for him, a lot of it was his face and his emotion, and they did a great job with that, and I think that's worth so much more than any speaking role.
Oh yeah, no, he's I mean, he's got like maybe 8-10 lines in the film tops, but
acting with his eyes, so
yeah,
really matters.
Yeah. And I mentioned earlier as well, weren't the kids amazing? I mean, all of the kids in the film, including even the little kid with the afro.
Yeah.
And that scene is so chilling as well, because I don't know if you noticed, but when you're on the party with the island, and you got that horrible guy who says, "I like to get in the ring," and I just went, "Ugh, ugh." And he's looking at the kids, and I don't know if you noticed, but the camera centered on one of the older girls, and it lingers on that girl for like a couple of seconds, and then he goes and picks the youngest kid who's standing right next to her. They deliberately set that up like that so that it shocked you even more.
Wow.
And yeah, I liked also the thing that they did when they said, take him off first, treat him like he's getting off, and get him out of here as fast as possible. And when that happened, it's a bit spoilers for people that haven't seen it, but there was that brief moment where you actually thought maybe he is getting off, and he actually does know that police captain, but that's not the case. He went to prison along with all the rest of them. And I think they used that as a trick to get the girl to turn evidence against them all.
Yeah, there were scary moments, Lance, in White Bear 3. I was scared for him, and I didn't know I was going to feel that way in this film. I thought I was going to be confident that nothing could harm him, and that wasn't true. And it maybe is more realistic to portray it this way. And the island, and I don't know about you, Lance, but I immediately thought about the Epstein situation, because he had that island, and the girl talked about how they couldn't escape the island. Obviously you're in the middle of the ocean. There's nowhere to go. You can't swim to another island.
Right.
And they were trapped there, and there was no place to go, no place to run. So, I think maybe, I'm not going to say that's why they did that, but it did remind me of that, where they really had no place to get away.
Melvin Deeply says the Epstein thing was crazy. Girls were trafficked to important clients. but not one of the clients were ever charged or even named. People with power must be involved there. I don't doubt that's the case. I mean, this is a much smaller story in a way, and it's much further down the rungs of ladders of power. I'm not saying there are rungs that are not involved, but it's in the same world as that.
Yeah.
As
Right.
you know, the Epstein is right at the top of that. It's all in that same murky, horrible, evil den. I mean, do we think that the impact of this movie, and in particular for producers, the box office, do we think that that's maybe going to lead to them exploring more stories in this world? And there are lots of them. Or do we think the studios will be afraid to tackle these subjects? White Bear, what do you reckon?
Sorry, I was bringing up replying to one of other people's messages on
Well,
here.
that's right. Let our jump in while you're thinking about that.
I think about a movie called Identifying Features, and it was a movie that came out in 2020, and the film has some similarities to this film. It's about a mother who's looking for her son. The film got a lot of attention, and it was an unbelievable film. She searches for her son, and she actually finds her son, and he is a prisoner of a gang, and he can't leave. And it's quite a situation because, you know, he's an adult. Her son isn't, you know, not as young as these children are, but he himself is a prisoner and he's trapped. And it is quite a situation, not at all what the mother thought would happen to her child. Yes, that's it. It was a remarkable film. And I thought it would get, you know, maybe even some award nods, but there are some similarities to it. And
winner of Audience Award at Sundance and Best Screenplay at Sundance. Those are not too shabby.
Yes, it was.
But I guess maybe you were expecting it to go bigger from there, and it did not.
I thought it was going to go bigger. They went into the supernatural a little bit here, almost to a point where he was on a bus in Mexico, and everybody on the bus was kidnapped and either killed or done horrible things to. And he had to do horrible things himself to survive. And I thought, what a poignant way to show something he's a young guy to have to survive like this. And he told his mother, I can't ever leave. They won't ever let me leave. And I just, you know, thought this is another situation. Like he's in bondage, essentially, doing whatever they're asking him to do. And certainly she goes looking for him, and they said, oh, we think we found your son. And it's just some other kid. And she suddenly realized that the police, unfortunately, were not ever going to help her find her son. She had to go find him. So
I remember that scene. So I've definitely seen this film.
Yeah.
I do remember that scene. I like the way on the poster, you look at the poster, it's actually a map of South America. Yes. And you can
see his profile there, and he's there somewhere, right? You know, he's there. Her son is still alive, and the fire represents, you know, he's essentially in hell, you know, for practical purposes, if we're going to look at it from a metaphor, I guess. But I think more films like this, people will become interested in. It certainly was an incredible film. There were a lot of scenes that didn't have, once again, a lot of speaking parts. And I think that people want to see stories like this, these real stories. It certainly does. You know, it affected me terribly. I was very shocked and stunned by how this boy was he essentially is in bondage as well. So
I saw a fantastic show on Netflix about 6 weeks to 8 weeks ago, and it's about the biggest nightclub fire that occurred in South America, and it became this huge story, this huge case with the parents seeking justice for all their kids that were killed. About 150 of them died, and I think it's a 6-part drama. And it's, again, you're saying people want these kind of things. I put one episode of that on, and I was still watching it at 4:00 in the morning. And I mean, not everybody has the luxury of being able to do that because I set my own hours being freelance. But oh man, I mean, I was like you. I was in bits when I finished watching it. I actually tracked down one of the dads of one of the kids on Facebook and said, look, I've just seen this story about what happened to your kids. He said, I'm ever so sorry. I'm going to promote this film as much as I can. And he said, please do that for me. So it's no problem. It's weird, isn't it? That's a moment in where a narrative goes beyond the story that you just watch on the screen and then you carry on with your day. It's on a different level, that kind of ability of a film to communicate a tangible truth that then impacts you, that then makes you do something that then means something to somebody else. It's annoying me now because I can't remember the name of this show, but I'll look it up in just a second. But I highly recommend that, and I think that probably is also available in the UK. Freelance, yeah, that's
nice.
I'm not currently in prison, but you never know. I think Dr. Beast Hunter says audiences want smaller stories. Medicine for superhero films of the last decade. I listen. As a kid, I loved Spider-Man, Superman, all that. I have no interest in those films now. I can't watch another film where there's a CGI fight fest with 500 aliens and 10 characters beating the crap out of everybody, and half an hour later everyone's great and the film's finished, and it's just like, so what? So you're right. And it's not that people don't want those films, but they kind of want them done a bit better, and they're just old hat now. And I don't think those like back in the day when the Soulkinds made Superman, there were never going to be 20 Superman films. That they struggled to make 4. I don't think that we ever wanted 400 movies all set in one universe. It's just got a bit saturated, and it's not that some of them aren't great and that the writing on some of them isn't great. Some of it's amazing, but there's such a thing as overload, and I think it's great that a small film like this has tapped in a nerve for whatever reason and has gone off like a rocket. And I mean, looking at the filmmakers and just digging a bit deeper, I don't personally see an affiliation with this movie to the right side of politics. Now, some individual players may have made statements in the press about, I feel this about a certain topic or that, but that can happen with a cast member on any particular film at any particular time or TV show. Do I think that this movie leans that way or is making some kind of statement? I don't see it in even a single scene. So that's my view on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And just looking at the film, trying to understand, the title says "The Sound of Freedom," and the sound of freedom is not a political point of view.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out how people are equating being free from bondage as that, but it's okay. That's what they want. People are free to believe what they like, and that's okay. I think we have to look at this from the perspective of that it doesn't take as much perhaps to convey very strong emotions about social issues that we have right now. And when they can prove that you can go ahead and make a production like this, and perhaps a lot of it was out of the necessity of the pandemic, and not the pandemic, but budget constraints, and having to come up with creative ideas of how to make things work. This shows that it can be done. But also, I think Jim Caviezel, I think that's his name, is such a strong actor that he can carry a film like this. If it was just him and the boy, it would have worked. So while there was a wonderful supporting cast, they were fantastic. He himself has a lot of that presence that makes you want to watch his story. I want to learn more about this man.
Right.
Yeah.
And he probably represents the average man, let's say, on the planet, because most men, I would imagine, feel this way. They don't want this stuff to happen, and they would do anything they could in their power to do that. And to go ahead and make a change. And that's probably how most men feel. I'm not a man. I'm not saying that's how they feel, but I imagine that is how they are. That's how I view men, as being good and protecting us and making sure we stay safe and, getting us out of harm's way. That's another very positive thing about this film, is that it portrays, I think, a man standing up for, and quite a few people, but, let's say the main character, he's a man, he's a white male, standing up for what he thinks is right and making a difference.
Yeah, and it's a true story, and the guy really did that. I know he's gone on to fund an organization which has had some controversy, but the film isn't about that organization. In fact, that organization is not even mentioned in the film. It might be in the end credits, I think it might be in the end credits, but it's not mentioned in the film. So this is not a movie that's there to promote a man's organization that he did after he left working for Homeland Security. I think for me, it's just about a human being doing the right thing. That's my take on it. By the way, so talking of true stories set in foreign lands that are worth your attention, this is the TV show that I was talking about, which is, it's a different story, but it's called The Endless Night. So Todo da Mia Mesa Norte is The Endless Night, and it's about the Kiss nightclub fire, which actually killed 242 people, not 150, in Santa Maria in 2013. So this is not an old story. This is pretty recent. And I mean, you can see from the trailer, without even the sound on it, it follows 4 different families, all of whom lose somebody. And the whole thing was a complete scandal. The club hadn't been properly, hadn't got a proper safety certificate from the local council. The fire guys fucked up a little bit as well. The whole thing was a mess. And the fire was started by one of the bands that was actually performing. So it's a really good show, very much tonally I would call it a tonally similar kind of story. This is one of the protests that really happened. I think it was a year later, where they actually put out all these silhouettes to represent the numbers of people outside the real club who passed away. Man, I was proper moved by this story, just as it moved me to the same level as watching the Sound of Freedom or Sound of Freedom. So it's another one. It's a good one to mention on this stream because again, it's not an indie show, but it's a well financed, I think 5 or 6 part television series, but definitely one worthy of your time, support, and attention. If you can get through it without a box of tissues, and I'm pretty sure you won't, you'll need them. It's not a comedy to sit down and watch with your family on a Friday night, but it is a film completely worthy of your time.
Well, to kind of go back to your question earlier, and also like, what do we think like this will impact and what will it bring, and what people are saying here in the chat is, in my opinion, this is one of those things that's extremely raw, and people crave. I mean, just as no matter the subject and all that, we see these very raw documentaries and films. Whether they're good or bad, people are kind of flocking to them. And human reaction and human reality, those stories are really, really selling. So I think that's probably part of the reason that this is hitting so hard and doing so well for what budget, and not a gigantic cast of extremely over the top popular actors. However, the name of the movie might have triggered some people in political groups. The Jim Caviezel, he is somewhat, barely outspoken, but the reaction from certain press here in the United States is terrible about this movie, and it has nothing to do with politics of the right at all. This should be a natural human function, as as Armin was saying, is like, this is what any man, or a father or a mother, a mother who produces, those kids, you want, you are geared towards protecting them. You're geared towards everything about them, and the father is too, and this should be a natural want to at least support the message of this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what
I mean. The message of this movie isn't to go and buy Jim Caviezel's latest CD or whatever people might be saying. It's to bring to light a really important topic, which is that this is on the increase. It's a massive worldwide problem. It's not getting enough publicity. The people that are trying to tackle it probably don't have enough funding either. I couldn't agree more, and I think people should support it just because of the narrative that it's trying to tell. You don't have to agree with the main character's motivations if you know what he went on to do afterwards and all of that stuff. And I'm not going to get into a discussion about the organization he runs now and whether they've done good or bad things, which has been much debated on the internet. I don't think in the grand scheme of this film, that's really what's important. What's important is the content of the story of this movie. And it's a story that's worthy of being told and seen by as many people as possible. Agree, RM?
I agree. And there is, and it's going to sound like I'm kind of focusing on the male aspect of this, but I also think that it needed to be a man who went and did this, because the way I look at it is that I really do believe that only a man could go and get the kids back. So, it's kind of acknowledging that men can do things like this, and
it's rare nowadays.
It is rare, but it's the truth. I mean, it had to be a man who went and got them. And that was really important to show that. And, there are men like this. There are incredible men like this. There are operators who can do missions like this, and they're remarkable. And I'm grateful that they can do that. As a woman, I know I could not do this, and I'm grateful.
Well, it's for all the in the modern Western world, for all the modernization we have, and the fact that we have female soldiers and female officers and female captains of aircraft carriers and all the rest of it. If you go into a third world country or an area like Cartagena or the rebel-run hills of these kinds of places, as a woman, that's not an environment that's going to welcome you in that world as it is now. And
you become a target.
Yeah, you're immediately a target of all kinds of things. And if two female doctors had gone on that speedboat, because they disguise themselves as doctors at one point, and they go upriver, where not even the special forces of the country will go, let alone the police. Special forces won't even go there because they think this kid is in the camp of the rebels, which and so they disguise themselves as doctors. If that had been two nurses, those nurses would not have come back.
No, they wouldn't.
They've been Western nurses. And you only need to think of that film with James Woods, El Salvador. Did you guys ever see that?
No, I love James Woods.
Well, you should, because it's a script written by Oliver Stone. It's one of his earliest. Before he was big, it was sold. He didn't direct it, and it's the true story of this reporter. And I think one of the stories that he broke was about the rape and murder of 3 American nuns who were killed when they were trying to do the Lord's work with the Salvador, when it was all, there was the Civil War and all of the stuff was kicking off and everything. The country was a bit of a mess.
It is pretty hard for missionaries.
Yeah, it's a brutal film. It doesn't pull punches, but it's well worth seeing, and probably not on the same night that you watch this. That's not a good double bill.
Yeah.
You might want to watch this and then an episode of Family Guy to chill out. but in any case, so fantastic. Well, I think we're at nearly an hour and a half, so I think we'll wrap it up there. I was only going to do like half an hour, but needed to give our some adequate screen time. There's some marriage proposals in the chat there, Aram. I won't feature those. Yeah, Salvador.
It's the hair. Look at the hair.
Yeah, that's the movie. Well, yeah, flowing hair. We need what you need next week is like some sort of halo that's floating above. Put it on an aerial behind you, maybe. So there are some people in the chat that are saying that they're not going to watch the film, but they're going to support it in other ways. I mean, that's fine. It's not going to be for everyone. Gritty true story dramas are quite hard to watch. Listen, I mentioned Hillsborough earlier, and that would be a really interesting discussion for us to have if you watch the Hillsborough drama.
Okay.
And I think the whole film is on YouTube. If you fish around, you can probably find it. It's a true story of this big disaster that happened in the UK in '89. The TV drama was made in '97. I did a play about it a year later, and I was inspired to write that play by the TV drama. But it's a very, very, very difficult watch, and but essential. So I'd be interested to know how a story about a tragedy that happened in my country, which will seem very far removed to you guys, both of you, how that would impact you watching the drama about that. So that would be a good stream to do.
As long as I can understand the English and it's not Cockney, I'm good.
No, it's mainly well spoken. There's some Scouse accents in there because it's Liverpool fans mainly.
Right.
But I don't think you'll have a problem watching it. And of course, there's subtitles on everything these days.
Oh, thank you.
So, White Bear, where can people find you, see you, subscribe, all of that sort of stuff? Where's your wigs available for people to purchase as a novelty item? Tell us everything.
Well, let's see. If you're getting into gardening or homesteading and all that, check me out on White Bear 3 on YouTube. And also tonight, here in about an hour or less than an hour, 8 o'clock or 8:05 my time, will be on Cannoli Sasquatch's channel, which you've been on for True Lies, reviewing Mission Impossible 6. And
that's the one that I'm doing with you, isn't it?
Yeah, and we're very glad that you can make it. So
yeah, I'll be there. I won't be there for the whole thing, but I say that.
You say that, but
I said that about True Lies.
You up for 3 hours one time, so
you did, yeah.
Yeah, bless your heart there over in Britain.
I'll come on for a bit because I want to have a pop at the Cavill. So,
but I haven't got to see Mrs. RM. So, what's she all about?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this. Although the truth be told, I begged Lance to come on this broadcast because I loved this film so much.
I begged you to come on my anniversary stream, which was yesterday, and
I didn't get the link.
It was so good.
Oh, I sent it out weeks ago to like everybody, but I don't know. It's probably in a spam folder somewhere.
Well, I'm sorry I couldn't make that, and happy 1 year anniversary to you.
Thank
Lance.
you.
Doing such a great job with the Outcast Creative, exposing so many people to so many industry professionals and so many stories that need to be told right here on your channel. Lance, you have a very unique way of doing things. And I think you really are a creator who likes to share the creative and performing arts with so many.
Thank you. That's very kind to say. Thank you very much.
It's absolutely true. I mean, I have been enjoying your interviews with so many industry professionals and learning so much about the theater as well in the UK. White Bear and I are here in the US. I'm assuming I'm in New York, White Bear. I'm assuming you're somewhere here in the US as well.
Tennessee, yeah.
And, I don't get to hear about the UK theater. I know there's a West End, but that's all I know. So it's wonderful to hear what's going on there and other cultural things that are interesting and get your opinions about things. So Lance, this is such a great channel. You really are doing such a great service to those of us who are interested in the creative process. So I did want to say that.
Thank you. Very kind.
You're welcome. And guys, I have my own YouTube channel called Positive Fandom. So I have a great show on Sunday called Sunday Brunch at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I just do all the parlay and the fandom. We have a good time. And also I do gaming streams and watch movies that are significant in history. Lance, you were there with us when we did Gettysburg.
Yes. did Gettysburg and Glory, two of my favorite movies.
Wow.
I've got a few. I've got a few watch parties. I've just done a Battle Beyond the Stars watch party, a very significant movie in my history.
Yes.
And
we're going to be doing 8 Men Out on Thursday.
Yeah, that's right.
Another kind of a major historical event, of course, Shoeless Joe Jackson, and so much more with Darth Plato, who I stream with sometimes. But I'm also doing an Outlander watch party, so on Fridays. And I also do stream on the Burn Network as well. I do reviews of movies as well as shows, kind of like not as good as this show, Lance, but I have a Ladies of the PTS show where we talk about what's going on in entertainment.
I like watching your shows very much.
Thank you. I also do a Midnight Musing show with Robert Meyer Burnett on the channel. So guys, please do check it out. Positive Fandom is my YouTube channel. And thank you, gentlemen, for having me here tonight. It was wonderful talking about such an incredible film with so many incredible performances.
I think this is the first time you've both been on the channel, actually.
It is.
I've been on your channel before.
Which
both at the same time.
Oh, you mean together?
No, but which one were you on, Aram? I can't remember.
I've played like a role playing game with you.
Oh yes, you did an episode of Lone Wolf, which is
yes, we did.
Yes, so
and we had to roll the dice and figure out where we were going to go.
I'm so sorry. These are the Lone Wolf books, which are like they were out very big in the 80s and 90s.
Yes.
Choose Your Own Adventure. They've re-released them. I've actually interviewed the guy behind the re-release on my channel. You can find it. It's on the channel. And I am going to play the whole series live online. And I'm currently halfway through Fire in the Water. But then we got false accounts. I had to start rehearsing for the show. So all of my kind of YouTube plans went out the window. But I'm going to be carrying on that quest of the Lone Wolf. I've got the first 5 books there. I've got the first 10 of these are the old editions, which are very dinky and somewhat antiquated with the artwork, but I like them still. Never threw them away. Always kept them. I'll be getting into those. It'd be great if you could join me for another one of those, actually. White Bear, if you ever want to come on that and help me choose the pathways to doom, always welcome.
I'm your guy for that. And go you, Positive Fandom, for having all your shows scheduled out. Look at you.
Yeah. She's got it's like planned years in advance.
Yeah, go her.
I've got like 2, and I'm still figuring out how to do my posters so they all look the same. And because I'm terrible at remembering software applications. Before we go, Melvin Deeply has said, "Did you see the 3-part Cracker episode called To Be Somebody with Robert Carlyle?" I absolutely did, where he's saying LIVERP OOL Liverpool FC. That's when Christopher Eccleston, who was the first Doctor Who in the relaunch, he gets attacked and stabbed in that show. And that whole scene where he's calling the police to come and rescue him is one of the most nail-biting scenes in a TV drama ever. So Brogu has just subscribed to our Brogu is awesome. That is one of Retro Nerd Girls fans. But yes, I did see that. Funnily enough, I didn't see that until after I'd seen the Hillsborough drama, but it was made before. So, and I did watch Cracker. I just happened to miss that one. But yeah, Cracker, very good show with Robbie Coltrane, who played Hagrid, of course, in the Harry Potter shows, who sadly passed away. I think it was last year. So, okay, that's it for us. I've got to get off and rest my voice for a little bit before I'm back on another
late
channel.
Near you, Lance. I don't know how you're up right now.
We're going to keep them up, too.
I keep explaining to people that I'm an acting coach, and most of my clients are in Los Angeles and New York, which is 5 hours and 8 hours behind. So my day over here has never been the same as I normally go to bed around 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's been that way for like 6 years because this has been my job. So this is not a problem for me because my body clock is different for everyone else. And that explains why my social life now is making a profound move to YouTube because, generally people aren't free for chats at 3 in the morning. But I sometimes I might have to cancel the stream because a client books me and says, I've got a really important audition for Law and Order because I've booked 4 people on Law and Order, So yeah, I've got booked people some pretty good jobs back in the day. So for anybody who ever wants to book me as an acting coach, you can find me via the Outcast Creative Facebook page. If you're an actor and you've got an important casting, come and see me and we'll book a session. My rates are very reasonable. You can also find all my books on Amazon. The links for some of those are on some of the other streams. I will probably add them to this at some point. My latest book, 1988, is out right now. That's my diary from 1988. It contains the reviews of all the films I saw that year, as well as a very embarrassing Dawson's Creek-esque narrative of my life at that time, which I'm sure once White Bear has read, he will come back and tease me about to no end degree, which of course is the whole reason for reading it in the first place. So thanks very much, guys. Leroy Peters also has subscribed to Positive Van. Look at this.
So much.
Getting loads of subs. So got to come on my channel more often, Aaron. What can I say?
There we go.
So,
I will.
All right. So listen, thanks to everybody watching. Remember what I always say. If you've got a friend in your life that you haven't called for a while and you think that they would appreciate getting a call from you, not 3 o'clock in the morning in the UK, of course, call them at a reasonable time. Forget all this texting nonsense. Leave them a lovely message. If they don't pick up, just reach out to them and let them know that you care, because people appreciate that, And we'll see you all again real soon.
Bye.
And we are off air.